7 o'clock. So I'd like to say if we start late, we'll get out late, but that probably won't be true because we're going to be in Proverbs 2. And unlike many of the Proverbs, this is a really short proverb. And probably we should have connected another chapter with it. But anyway, it's going to be short. And so if you want to help me out and, bring up things that you'd like to speak on the subject here, that would be good. If you don't, hey, we might just get out really early and just look at everybody for the rest of the class. So anyway, Proverbs 2 is what we're going to be looking at tonight. If you'll bow with me, and then we'll start in the chapter. Our Father, we are thankful that we can gather here peacefully, that we can open up your word and glean from it the things, the ways of life that you would have us to follow, that we can understand from these Proverbs the wisdom that Solomon is speaking, and Father, the guidance it can help us in our lives. Help us to understand the wisdom here in these Proverbs. Continue to bless us. We're thankful for Jesus, our Savior. And again, we're thankful for all of your blessings, and we praise you as our God. Be with us this night. It's through Jesus we pray. Amen. Okay. So last week, Chad did an introduction. He had somewhat of a longer chapter, as I said, than we have tonight. So what I've done is I've basically my presentation on the board here will just be definitions of words, and there's quite a few words in here to define them. Helps us to understand the Proverbs. So when we talk about Proverbs, generally I always think of it as wise sayings. So anyway, I think that's a good definition. Now, you're going to hear all kinds of definitions out there, and probably all of them are pretty close to accurate. But I look at it as wise sayings. So I got a question for you right off the bat. Is a proverb always a guarantee? Okay. So if I told you that if you drive safely and obey all the laws of the road, that you'll always arrive to your destination. Pardon? Well, okay. That's a. Oh, okay. Well, that is true. And remember, these are Proverbs of Solomon, and they're wisdom that Solomon got from God. And then defining a proverb are wise sayings. But if you go like one that we know so well in Proverbs 22, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Again, it's kind of like drive safely, and you'll always arrive at your destination. It's not an absolute guarantee. And of course, when we speak of Proverbs 22 and its definition in raising a child, we realize it's a wise saying, it's the right thing to do, and that is the best way to raise up a child that way, and he will be a follower of God. We train our children that way. But unfortunately, it's never a guarantee, and like with a child, it's always comes down to their decision. But the parent's guidance is very important. Having said all that, we'll go to the first 5 verses of chapter 2. And since I don't think time is going to be a big problem, I will read the Proverbs. Excuse me. And I'll be reading from the New King James Version. So some of your versions are going to have different words, but they're probably synonymous or the same in meaning. So anyway, if you have one that's a different word and you'd like to say, hey, Steve, mine says this, that'll be fine too. So anyway, from verse 1 to verse 5 in the second proverb, it says, my son, If you receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, and yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. So anyway, starting out there with verse 1, when he says, my son, first of all, who would you say his son was? I mean, who was, pardon? Okay, now that, I think that can be true, but who was Solomon's son truly? Rehoboam, yeah. So is it directed towards his son? I think that's a possibility, or is it directed towards mankind? Yeah. I'm sorry, one more time. Right, yes, everything, yes. Uh, what Chad just said, you could say he's directed it towards everybody that has less wisdom than Solomon. So again, let me just remind you, as we think about these Proverbs, Solomon had great wisdom. We all know that. We understand that. But where did Solomon get his wisdom? He asked God to give him the wisdom. He asked for wisdom from God. And again, that's something that we can do too. And sometimes when you ask for these things and you get them, along with wisdom comes a lot of responsibility. So as the old saying goes, be careful what you ask for. But yes, ask for wisdom. One person that I looked at said, the speaker shall it's verse 1 through 8, and he says it's talking about the seeker shall find God. And of course, when we say that, is there a verse in Matthew that we think about? Matthew 7 and 7, seek and you shall find. And that's, again, just asking God for wisdom, for the right things. So a seeker of the right things will find God. My son, receive my words, treasure my commandments. And I've divided these. There's always seems like there's a number 1 and a number 2 to each verse. So it's my son, receive my words. And this is Solomon, I think, again, giving advice to his son, truly his son, Rehoboam. And I do believe, and I could stand corrected, I do believe that he is addressing it to his son. But the application is to all mankind, as we said. And treasure means to keep carefully as a valued item. So what he's going to advise him in, like the wisdom, the understanding, these are all valued items that he's saying to him to keep these carefully. These are very important. And he says, incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. So, there it come up. Wisdom. Now, we've heard wisdom defined so many times. And so these are just definitions that I received from the internet, and also they're from the dictionary as well. So wisdom is having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. Excuse me, I don't know what's happening here. So anyway, incline your ear to wisdom. Be willing to listen to wisdom. And that's the key right there. Be willing to listen to wisdom. So many times we're not willing to listen. And to apply your heart is he's saying, get understanding. Get understanding. And I think I have understanding here. There it is, right there. So understanding is the ability to understand something, comprehend, having insight, good judgment, sympathetically aware of other people's feelings, and tolerant of and forgiving. And I kind of like the last part of this. we all say, well, I understand, applying the ability to understand something, to comprehend, having the insight of good judgment. And then following that, he says, sympathetically aware of other people's feelings, tolerant and forgiving. And that kind of adds a little icing to the cake there for me. We always understand having insight and good judgment. That is understanding. But good advice for us today. And as I said, it's just understanding is going to be repeated repeatedly throughout the book. And wisdom and these kind of words are words that Solomon are going to encourage his son to have. Verse 3, if you cry out for discernment, lift up your voice for understanding. So, let's look at, whoops, I thought I had discernment there. So, knowledge. Somehow that got mixed up. But anyway, knowledge are facts, information, skills gained by experience and education. So let's just talk about that a little bit. Knowledge, facts, and information. And that's, I guess with knowledge, that's a lot of what we think about. It's knowledge and information. We go back and we study in school, and we learn from a book. We learn from information, but also from skills gained by experience and education. And I guess this rings a bell with me. A lot of my education came from what we call on-job training, just application of how to go out and do a job for me. You learn by experience, and it's one very big way in our society to get knowledge. You do it by repeated using what you've learned or what you understand. And so anyway, and then he says, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, have we covered that? Let me see if I can find this discernment here. There it is. That's the one I wanted to talk about a little bit too. Discernment is the ability to judge well, and spiritually it means a view to gain spiritual guidance and understanding. So anyway, this is a skill, isn't it? The ability to judge well. And as you go through life, I guess it has a special meaning for me. And I'll just share a few things with you. As an elder, this is something that I tell you, there's so many judgment calls you have to make. And I'd like to tell you, I got them all right, and I did not. And I'll just be right up front with you. But anytime you're working with individuals or working with people, and you need to have this discernment, this ability to judge well. And so anyway, it's big. It's big, and I tell you, for me anyway, it's been a learning experience all my life, and it still is. There's still judgment calls. You have to understand what you're judging about, and with all the information you can get, and sometimes still, you say, I don't think I did that right. And it's happened to me a lot. Lift up your voice to understanding, just very big words for us to apply to our life. If you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasures, you spend as much time seeking wisdom as seeking earthly gain. Sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on earthly gain, and maybe we should be more emphasis on seeking wisdom, and of course God's wisdom. And so anyway, just a comparison there. And hidden treasures. Pam and I watched this guy quite a bit. His name is Josh Gates, and he's someone. How many of you heard about him? We really enjoy watching some of his. I guess he would be another. He's kind of like searching for what's the guy that searched for the ancient, not to search for the ancient, Indiana Jones. That's it. So he's like a modern day Indiana Jones. He's an archaeologist, and he's always going out and taking all of these things that you hear about, this hidden treasure somewhere, and seeking to find, even in search of the ark, and he's been through all kinds. We've watched him for several years, and he's always seeking out these treasures or something like that, and putting a lot of energy in it. And I mean, sometimes we can get so involved in trying to seek out a hidden treasure, we really miss the important things in life. Instead of seeking wisdom, God's wisdom, that is. And in verse 5, he says, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And a lot can be said about understanding the fear of the Lord. And of course, we've defined fear many times of the Lord and say, well, it's not totally a situation where you're sitting down shaking with great fear, but it's a respect. It's an honor that we give God. And so, anyway, and to find the knowledge of God. In today's class this morning, we had a really good class. It was the guys, and we all met over at Randy's, and we were talking about God and how you see God in all creation. And it's real interesting. It's just, everybody had some input into it. Oliver fixed it, so we all had a little input into it. And when you start looking at it that way, and everybody had different ideas, and then the world just kind of opens up to you, and you just realize that no matter where you look, no matter what you're trying to find, you see God in all of it. You need to see God in all of it. So anyway, we kind of kicked it off from Romans 1 and 20, where it says that there's no excuse. Man has no excuse. We can see God in the creation. Okay, verses 6 through 9. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield for those who walk uprightly. He guards the path of justice. He preserves the way of his saints. And then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. Okay, we have several words that we want to define in this. For God gives wisdom. We've already talked about that. We should probably just leave them all up there. But he talks about righteousness here. For God gives wisdom, and from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So God gives wisdom, but much work and study goes into acquiring wisdom. We don't just lay down at night and automatically God gives us wisdom. I know that we might say, well, that was applied to the apostles, and it was, and but even Solomon asked God for wisdom. And so anyway, wisdom is gained again by experiencing something that's on hands, or getting it from a book, or doing it from trial and error and so on. But anyway, we can pray to God for wisdom. In fact, it tells us to pray to God for wisdom, and he'll give us wisdom. And it all comes from God. Everything comes from God. Wisdom comes from God. Understanding comes from God. Knowledge comes from God. But we have to seek it, and we have to try to find it. We have to work for it. We have to study his word. That's where we get the wisdom. Any comments on any of this? Okay, Randy. I think, yep, that's what I'd look at it. I think he hit the, yeah. So in James 1 there, and I would understand that, you pray to God for wisdom, but he doesn't mean that you lay down on your bed and get up the next morning and you have all this wisdom. You work for the wisdom. Study, to show yourself approved unto God. This is where you don't just say, well, God gave it to me last night. When Daniel prepares his lessons, he goes back there and he does a lot of study, and I do know that because I see him back there. So he studies for the wisdom to present a lesson. Well, yeah, I would understand that, sure. It's just like, well, my grandson-in-law he's a licensed electrician now, but he spent 4 years, and that's 8,000 hours of getting experience. And still, does he know it all? No, he's learning every day. He goes out on jobs, and that's just the way it is. And he's getting wisdom. I mean, he's acquiring it all the time. And you really never quit acquiring it. It's always coming. Anything else on that? Okay. Yes. Okay, Daniel.
No, I wanted to go back to when it was talking about discernment. And I think that's also very, very important. I remember when I first obeyed the gospel and wanted to do the right thing, and so every homeless person pretty much I passed by, I'm giving. I'm like, at the end of it all, like I gave my whole check. But I think discernment is very important in that regard and in a lot of different regards. And even here in this section in verses 6 through 9, as we know that the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. And so he's saying all of these things. And then in verse 9, as he says all of these things, he says, then you would discern righteousness and justice and equity in every good course.
Mm-hmm.
When people begin to ask the question, well, did this thing that God did in the Old Testament, or is this thing that's going on right now, is that good? And when we're considering discernment and considering what thus said the Lord, well, what the Lord does is good. There are a lot of times where mankind, we say, well, no, it's good that you do this, and yes, I can get that, but what does God say about it? And so that just kind of again goes back to that discernment and how every good way is from the Lord. And in verse 9, as he preserves the way of his godly ones, then you will discern. If you're walking in that way, you'll know what's good. He says, then you will discern righteousness. You'll know what righteousness is. You'll know what justice is. You know what equity and every good course is. And that's for those that are walking that godly way.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I don't know if it was all heard on the tape or not, but yes, I agree with what you said. And by the way, if you didn't hear it, we will cover a little more of that when we get down there. We're headed that way, and we'll cover it a little bit more. So I just wanted to say here, not all knowledge is good. And you got to think about that a little bit, and you might disagree with that. Well, I don't think you will. But it's just like parents and a child. You don't give all knowledge to your child at times. And, it's and some things are not good. It's not good knowledge. And then if you think about us and God, and what if God tried to give us all knowledge? I mean, first of all, we couldn't handle it. That's for sure. We couldn't handle it. And probably if we knew all the things that God knows, as I said, we couldn't handle it. Probably I'd plop over here dead, just like that. So it's just, God is all-knowing, and we can't handle that. So anyway, I just thought that's a good point. And then he is a shield to those who walk uprightly. And that's uprightly is in the right way. If you're walking uprightly, you're walking in the right way. And God takes care of you. I mean, he asks us to walk that way. He asks us to walk in an upright way. And God's going to be good to us. He guards the paths of justice and preserves the way of the saints. Let me see if I can find justice on here. Somehow, I thought, there they all are, okay. So now justice, just behavior and treatment, a quality of being fair and reasonable. Okay. How many are going to stand up and say, yeah, I've had all just behavior, or I'm one that gives justice or just behavior and treatment to everyone, and I am being fair and reasonable in everything. Think about it that way. And pretty big ask, isn't it? Justice, and it's something we talk about repeatedly in the news. You hear it. Are the judges being just? Are they meting out just decisions? We hear about unjust judges, and certainly I think that is something that is happening. But that's not God's way of wanting us to have justice. It's just behavior and treatment, the right behavior, and a quality of being fair and reasonable. And hey, in all of our lives, that's not easy to acquire sometimes, is it? To be totally fair and reasonable. And we are people, and we have it's kind of built in us sometimes to be a little bit prejudiced, and we have to work at it. So yeah, and sometimes we're not fair and reasonable. So anyway, you can look at it in so many ways with your children, with if you're a boss or whatever, you own a big company, whatever it is, justice is part of it. Verse 9, then you will understand righteousness. Here's understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. So this word equity, the quality of being fair and impartial, I kind of mentioned that, but is that always easy to do, to be fair and impartial? And anybody got any input on that? I can. What's that?
Leave it to God.
Yeah.
When it comes to how we treat our neighbor, we can go to God's word, and God tells us to do it this way, and His way is the right way.
You're right.
Leave that to God. Start following the way that God will have us.
Just to put what Daniel's been saying there, leave it to God. And God tells us how to be just and fair. But there's still within us sometimes you're thinking, it's pretty hard not to show partiality because you're partial to this person, you're partial to your children, you're partial to your family, which now I'm not saying you shouldn't be in some ways partial, but not in a way of being unjust. So having equity in every good path. Everybody's going to be faced with these kind of decisions, I can tell you, and it's not always easy. Charlie? Back to wisdom. We're supposed to know how to learn how to do that and do it properly. And yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. Yeah, it is. For everybody that's a parent, you know that. So let's move on to Proverbs 10 through 15. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is present in your soul, discretion will preserve you, understanding will keep you and deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, from those who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in preserving delight in perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked and who are devious in their paths. So we come to discretion, the quality of behaving and speaking in a way as to avoid offense and revealing private information. Let me get to that here. Let me see if I got that. discretion. So this is a word that he's going to use quite a bit. And these words are just repeated over and over again: wisdom, knowledge, and so on and so forth. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is a pleasure to your soul, this is what we want to achieve. This is what we're trying to do. This is, and Solomon is saying, when you get to this point, this is what we want. Discretion will preserve you. Be careful in what we say. Let's be discreet in what we say. It's so hard sometimes to speak in such a way to avoid offense and revealing private information. Sometimes this hinges on gossip. It's so exciting to pass a gossip on. So what do? We reveal private information. And when we reveal private information, somebody gets hurt. So anyway, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything here, but isn't that kind of the way it works? When we're not using discretion, we're not the quality of behaving and speaking in such a way to avoid offense. We kind of forget that this is offending someone, and all at once we blurt out something that's a private information. And so anyway, that is verse 11. Anyone want to add anything to that?
I guess also even jumping over to Proverbs 15, it talks about how a soft answer turns away wrath, and you can just kind of imagine, as it's talking about here, from the man who speaks perverse things, from those who lead the path of uprightness. I mean, a lot of times that has to do with an angry man or angry woman, and how do you go about answering that? Well, the Book of Wisdom talks about that, and it gives many different ways, and one of those is a soft answer. You don't yell back at that person. It's a way to do things, and wisdom will guide you in that.
Okay, Daniel, you did absolutely right. Everything you said right. Now I got to tell you what my wife says. She says, they will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Is that it? Okay. I hear that a lot.
Another way I heard that was, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Another way.
I took that to heart. One of the elders in Tampa told me that, and that's something I stuck with.
True, very true. Anyway, yep, my wife's been pretty good about reminding me that sometime, and rightfully so. I will say rightfully so. So this can be very big. Understanding will keep you. That's doing it right. In verse 12, to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, and from this person. So anyway, let's see. Doing it right will deliver you from the way of the devil, from the way of evil, or from the way of the devil. And so this word perverse, let's see if I have it here. There it is. A person or their actions showing a deliberate or obstinate desire to behave in a way that is unacceptable, often in spite of the consequences. Okay, I got a question for all of you. Have we seen anything like this in our nation today? And not just today, but is there anybody out there, a person that their actions are showing deliberate and obstinate desire to behave in a way that's unacceptable? Pretty obvious, isn't it? And often in spite of the consequences. I hate to bring this up because I do it a lot. But I tell you, one of the things that just speaks out to me is as the now I forgot what you call them, the guys that in the homosexual world, what do they call them? They're drag queens. Yeah, I mean they are so obstinate, and they're not doing it just to show wisdom or anything. They're just being obstinate, showing a deliberate and obstinate desire to behave in a way that's unacceptable. In other words, they know it's unacceptable. They know it's terrible, and they're doing it deliberately. And we see that in other ways too. Often, in spite of the consequences, sometimes they don't even care the consequences. They're just going to do it deliberately, just to spite somebody. So anyway, anybody want to add to that? Has anybody seen that out there in our modern world? Yep, it's deliberate, and they throw it in your face, and we see it out there in our world today very much. In verse 13, from those who leave the paths of uprightness, now that's uprightness, yes, we can leave uprightness and walk in darkness. 1 John 1, I won't read it for time's sake, but he talks about walking in the light, and if you're not walking in the light, you're in the darkness, and that's exactly what they're doing. And that is a continuous action. When you're walking in the light, you're continuously walking in the light. Who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked. You never know what to expect from that person. And who are devious in their paths. There's devious. Showing a skillful use of understanding, showing a skillful use of underhanded tactics to achieve the goals. And we pretty well see people out there doing it. They're skillful in the use of underhanded tactics just to receive their goals. So, now, a lesson for men, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters her words and forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant with God, a covenant of her God. For her house leads down to death, and her paths to death. None who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life. And so I just might say this is not describing all women. He's talking about a particular evil that goes on, and men have their problems too. So anyway, so I think that probably Solomon in his earlier life advising his son, this is a lesson for men and particularly young men. And when you flatter someone, it's really a sweet falsehood. And who forsakes the companion of her youth. That could mean her father or the husband, as in Malachi 2, 14 and 15. But anyway, and forgets the covenant of her God. The woman acts in a way that kind of life is destructive to the physical body. Whether you're a man or woman, it's destructive to the physical body. And, it cuts your life in a lot of respects. And her paths lead to death, both physically and spiritually. So anybody know in the Old Testament where this refers to a guy? Think of a guy in the Old Testament where this fits so good, who was led by a seductress. Oh, well, yes, maybe you could say that, but somebody that What about Samson? Yeah. Delilah was pretty much a seductress. And what did it do? It destroyed his life. And no one goes in to her returns. Sin always leaves a stain, and that's in the physical realm. And I can tell you, sin always leaves a stain. There's, don't get me wrong. There is a way of escape, and spiritually we can be white as snow. But in the physical realm, and you commit these kind of sins, and it leaves it. It's going to leave a stain. It's always going to be there, and it's a very scary thought. And addictions are very hard to escape. Okay, we got 4 minutes left, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to get down on time. So, sound advice for everyone, 20 through 22. So, you may walk in the way of goodness and keep the paths of righteousness. For the upright will dwell in the land, the blameless will remain in it, but the wicked will be cut off from the earth, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it. So, happy life, walk in the way of goodness. Keep the paths of righteousness. Do what's right, and you'll get a reward. And sometimes that thing you think, well, I'm doing what's right, and it just seems like it doesn't work out. Well, God didn't promise it was going to be easy. He didn't tell us that immediately we're going to get $1 million if you do what's right. There's no such thing really as a prosperity gospel. You can give $1 million and expect God to give you $1 billion. It just doesn't work that way. You walk in the way of righteousness and keep the paths of righteousness. For the upright will dwell in the land, and the blameless will return. Righteousness, justice, and equity are always the right way. This is a good way to preserve a nation, isn't it? It really is. And sometimes we wonder, is our nation standing in a way to preserve it? Because he talks a lot about preserving the people, preserving the land. Here we go to 250 years of this nation. And I'll tell you, this is good advice to preserve the nation. How the wicked and the unfaithful will receive their reward. Sometimes we look at it and say, well, this is not true. This doesn't happen fast enough or something like that. Things just aren't quick enough for me. It doesn't meet our timetable. But God hasn't told us that, if you do this the right way and stay righteous, tomorrow it'll all be sunshine and flowers. It just doesn't happen that fast. But we can do it, and it's the right way with God. Anybody have anything you want to add to all this? A lot of good information, isn't there? It's really so. The Proverbs have a purpose in the Word of God, and they give a lot of wisdom. And Solomon's going to repeat a lot of stuff over and over again, stressing all of these words we kind of spoke of tonight. With that, we'll close the class. And next week, Oliver's got chapter 3. And we'll be going through Proverbs. We've talked about whether to go ahead and go at the pace of a chapter a week or try to go faster. If we go a chapter of the week, we realize that it's going to extend it out quite a ways, and we have to make a decision. Another decision as elders, I guess, and if you have some input, we'd always welcome that. But, should we go a chapter? There's every chapter has a lot of wisdom in it, but, or should we just kind of speed it up and cover 2 or 3 chapters at a time? Good question.